There is a number hidden inside the most catastrophic moment in all of human history. It is not painted on the cross. It is not carved into the tomb. But it is there, pressed into the architecture of the event itself, woven into the prophecy that announced it 5 centuries before it happened. We will get to that number. But not yet. First, picture this. A scribe in Jerusalem, sometime in the 2nd century before Christ, is unrolling a long scroll. His oil lamp is low. His fingers are stained with ink. He has been counting, verse by verse, book by book, occurrences of a single number. When he finishes, he sets down his reed pen. 735 times. That is how many times the number 7 appears in the text of Scripture. 735 times. And that count does not include every form 7 takes. The 7s hidden inside 70, inside 77, inside the 7-year cycles, inside the 7-branched lampstand. When you add those in, the number climbs into the thousands. Now here is what most people miss. In the ancient world, numbers were not just quantities, they were meanings. And in Hebrew, the word for 7, sheva, shares the same root as the word for swearing an oath. To swear, in the ancient Near East, was to seven yourself. When Abraham and Abimelech made a covenant at Beersheba, the name of that place literally means well of the 7, or well of the oath. They were the same thing. 7 did not mean lucky. 7 did not mean magical. 7 meant complete. It meant God has finished this. He assigned his name to it. This is not a video about numerology. This is not a video about Bible codes. This is not a video about coincidence. This is a video about a pattern God wove into the story of creation, covenant, and redemption. And once you see it, you will not be able to stop seeing it. 735 times. Let's begin at the beginning. In the first chapter of Genesis, God creates the world in 6 movements. Light, sky, land, stars, creatures, humanity, 6 acts, each one declared good, and then comes the 7th. On the 7th day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the 7th day and made it holy. Notice what God does not rest from. He is not tired. The text never says he needed sleep. What God does on the 7th day is something far stranger and more beautiful. He rests into the completion. He pauses inside the finished work the way you might stand inside a room you have just built and breathe and say, yes, this is exactly what I intended. The Hebrew word for what God does on the Sabbath is shavat, to cease, to stop, to rest. It shares the same root family as sheva, 7. The 7th day is the day of ceasing because something has been brought to its whole and total completion. 7 is the number of it is finished. Now watch what happens when 7 enters a human life. Jacob is 17 years old when he first lays eyes on Rachel. He is standing at a well in Haran, a fugitive from his own family, a man who has just stolen his brother's blessing and run for his life. Rachel comes to water her father's flocks, and Jacob, this complicated, deceitful, broken man, falls in love immediately. He goes to her father Laban and makes a deal. 7 years of labor in exchange for Rachel's hand. You know what happens. The 7 years pass, the wedding night comes, and in the morning, Jacob pulls back the veil and discovers he has married the wrong woman. Laban has switched Rachel for her older sister Leah. Jacob confronts Laban. Laban's answer is almost breathtaking in its coldness. Complete the week of this one, he says, meaning finish this 7-day wedding celebration, and then you may have Rachel also, in return for another 7 years of labor. Jacob, the man who tricked his own dying father, now works 14 years for the woman he loves. The deceiver is deceived, and he accepts the terms. He chooses Rachel over freedom, over fairness, over everything. But here's the part nobody tells you. When Jacob finishes that second set of 7 years, the text says something remarkable. The 14 years seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. 7 can make 14 years feel like a few days when there is love in it. That is not just poetry. That is a statement about what completion costs and what it is worth. Stay with me, because the next 7 is darker. Noah is 600 years old when God speaks to him. The world has turned violent and corrupt. God looks at what he made and grieves. The Hebrew word is yatsaf, a word that carries the weight of pain deep in the chest, not surface-level disappointment. God is heartbroken over what humanity has become. He tells Noah, "In 7 days I am going to send rain." 7 days, not one, not immediately. 7 days of warning, 7 days of walking toward the ark, while the rest of the world watched and laughed and went on with its business. Noah brought 7 pairs of every clean animal aboard. 7 pairs, enough to restart, enough to begin again. When the rain finally comes and the water finally recedes, what does God plant in the sky? A sign, an arch of color stretched across the clouds. 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Every child who has ever tried to memorize them knows. 7 colors in a rainbow, 7 colors in light itself. The sign God chose to seal his covenant with creation was the same number he had been pressing into the story since the beginning. But now the covenant was different. Now it was sealed in grief and survival and rain. 7 means completion. But sometimes what completes is a world. And then comes Jericho. Joshua is standing outside the city walls, and the orders God gives him are almost absurd. Do not attack. Do not build siege equipment. Do not dig tunnels. Instead, take 7 priests. Give each one a ram's horn trumpet. March around the city once a day for 6 days. On the 7th day, march around 7 times. Then blow the trumpets. Then shout. That is the plan. You have to imagine what this looked like from inside the city walls. The soldiers of Jericho watching from the ramparts. A column of Israelites walking in silence day after day. No weapons raised. No attack. Just circling. Just 7 priests blowing trumpets. Just the sound of feet on dry ground. 6 days. Nothing happens. Day 7 comes. They circle once, twice, 3 times. 4, 5, 6, 7. Joshua gives the command. Every person shouts. And the walls fall inward, not outward the way walls fall when a battering ram hits them. The archaeologists who excavated Jericho in the 20th century found the mud brick walls had collapsed into the foundation ditch, fallen toward the city, not away from it. The Israelites could have walked straight up the rubble like a ramp. 7 circuits. And the wall that had stood for centuries came down in a moment. This is what 7 does in the hands of God. It does not rush. It does not force. It circles and waits and completes, and then the thing that seemed impossible simply falls. Every one of these stories has the same shape: a completion, a covenant, something breaking open that could not be forced open. Jacob's 14 years, Noah's 7 days and 7 colors, Joshua's 7 priests and 7 circuits. They are all the same pattern in different clothes. God moves in 7s not because 7 is a lucky charm, but because 7 is his signature, his seal, his way of saying, "I was here, I am finishing this, trust the count." If this kind of study is changing the way you read Scripture, I want to encourage you to subscribe. Hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming, because we are only halfway through, and the next half is where this gets extraordinary. Drop a comment. What is the 7 in Scripture that has always struck you the most? I want to know. Because we still have Elijah, we still have Daniel, we still have the Revelation, and we still have that number hidden inside the cross. Let's keep going. Mount Carmel. You need to picture this. The prophet Elijah has just won the most dramatic confrontation in the history of Israel. 450 prophets of Baal have called on their God for hours, cutting themselves, shrieking, dancing, and nothing came. No fire, no answer, no voice. Then Elijah prays once quietly, and fire falls from the sky and consumes the altar, the water, the stones, even the dust in the trench around it. The people fall on their faces. The false prophets are executed. And now Elijah turns to his servant and says, "Go, look toward the sea." The servant climbs the hill, looks out, comes back. There is nothing. Elijah says, "Go again." 7 times the servant climbs that hill. 7 times he looks toward the horizon. On the 6th return, the news is still nothing. Nothing on the first look, nothing on the second, nothing on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and then the 7th. A little cloud like a man's hand is rising from the sea. A cloud the size of a human hand. But Elijah knows. He sends word immediately to the king, "Hitch your chariot, ride hard, because the rain is coming." And the sky turns black. The wind rises, the rain falls. 3.5 years of drought ended by a cloud the size of a hand, seen only on the 7th look. Elijah did not stop at 6. He did not call it close enough. He sent the servant back for the 7th because he knew something about how God works. Completion is not approximate. 7 is not 6 plus 1. It is its own thing entirely. Pay attention to this, because the next 7 is the most precise prophecy ever written. Daniel is a young man when the Babylonians destroy Jerusalem. He is taken in chains to the capital of the empire, renamed with a Babylonian name, trained in the king's court. He is brilliant and faithful and utterly out of place. And one night, in the 1st year of the Median king Darius, an angel appears to him. The angel's name is Gabriel. And Gabriel tells Daniel that 77s have been decreed for Daniel's people. 77s. In Hebrew, that phrase is shivim shavuim, 77s or 70 weeks. Gabriel breaks the prophecy into sections. First, 7 sevens, 49 years, from the command to rebuild Jerusalem until the city stands again. Then 62 more sevens, 434 years, from the rebuilt city until an anointed one arrives. 7 plus 62 equals 69. 69 sevens. 69 times 7 is 483 years. 483 years from the command to rebuild Jerusalem. Here is where it gets remarkable. The decree to rebuild Jerusalem was issued by the Persian king Artaxerxes in the month of Nisan in the 20th year of his reign. Historians pinpoint that date to 445 BC. 483 years later, accounting for the way ancient calendars measured a prophetic year as 360 days, you land on a specific Sunday in the spring of the year 33 AD. The Sunday when a man rode a donkey through the gates of Jerusalem while the crowd laid palm branches at his feet and shouted, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Palm Sunday. The 69th seven ended the day Jesus entered Jerusalem. 4 centuries before it happened, a Jewish man in Babylonian captivity was given the arithmetic of the Messiah's arrival. He did not understand it fully. He wrote it down anyway. And across 483 years, across empires rising and falling, across the Medo-Persians and the Greeks and the Romans, the count held. Hold that thought, because the 70th seven, the last one Gabriel mentioned, is still coming. Before we get there, look at the book of Revelation. John is an old man, exiled to the island of Patmos by the Emperor Domitian. He is perhaps 90 years old. He is the last of the original 12 disciples still alive. And one Sunday morning, on that black volcanic rock in the middle of the Aegean Sea, he hears a voice behind him like a trumpet. He turns around, and he sees 7 golden lampstands. Standing in the middle of those lampstands, a figure whose face blazes like the sun at full strength, in his right hand 7 stars. The figure speaks. He identifies himself, and then he tells John to write. He dictates 7 letters to 7 churches in 7 cities: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea. Now, here is what most people miss about those 7 letters. There were more than 7 churches in Asia Minor at the time. There were dozens. So why these 7? Because these 7 tell the complete story of the church throughout history. Ephesus, the church that has forgotten its first love. Smyrna, the church in the middle of suffering. Sardis, the church that is outwardly alive and inwardly dead. Philadelphia, the church with a little strength that has kept its word. 7 churches, 7 eras, the whole sweep of Christian history compressed into 7 letters. Augustine of Hippo, writing in the 5th century, said that 7 was the first perfect number, combining the divine 3 and the earthly 4. He was not inventing that theology. He was recognizing something built into the structure of reality itself. And then there is Ruth. You might miss this one if you're not looking for it. Ruth is a Moabite woman who follows her mother-in-law Naomi back to Israel after both their husbands die. She is a foreigner, a widow, an outsider with no legal standing in a land that is not hers. She works the harvest fields all day and brings the grain home. And when the story reaches its resolution, when Boaz takes Ruth as his wife, when their son is born, the women of the village say something to Naomi. They say, "Your daughter-in-law is worth more than 7 sons." 7 sons. In ancient Israel, that was the highest human praise possible. A man with 7 sons was considered maximally blessed by God. The word 7 there is not a round number. It is the word for complete, for total, for everything. Ruth, a foreign widow with nothing, is called the completion of completeness, worth more than the most complete human blessing imaginable. 7 means more than a number. It means God has finished building this and it is good. Now, the open loop. Remember what I told you at the beginning. There is a number hidden inside the most catastrophic moment in all of human history. Gabriel told Daniel that 77s had been decreed. We counted 69 of them, 483 years from Artaxerxes' decree to Palm Sunday. But what about the 70th? Gabriel says something strange about it. He says that after the 69th 7, the Anointed One will be cut off and will have nothing. He says the city and the sanctuary will be destroyed. He says there will be war and desolations. And then, in the future, there will be a final 7. One last completion in which the story of Israel and the story of the world will reach its full end. Theologians have debated for centuries about the gap between the 69th and 70th 7s. But here is what the text makes clear. Between those 2 7s, something happens that interrupts the count. Something so catastrophic, it changes the shape of history. The Anointed One is cut off. And what happened in that gap, what happened in the spring of 33 AD, 1 week after Palm Sunday, is the event that every 7 in Scripture was pointing toward. Friday. A cross. 3 nails, 6 hours, and then at the 9th hour, a single sentence. It is finished. The Greek word is tetelestai. It was written on bills of debt when a debt was fully paid. It was stamped on legal documents when a transaction was complete. It was used in accounting, in legal proceedings, in commerce. It meant nothing more is owed. The account is settled. The work is done. Tetelestai. It is finished. And it is the theological equivalent of the 7th day. God rested on the 7th day because the creation was complete. Jesus said, tetelestai, because the redemption was complete. Same divine grammar. Same signature. 735 times the Bible uses the number 7. And all of it, was building toward one word spoken by one man on one Friday afternoon. Now watch this. Scientists tell us that white light, when passed through a prism, breaks into exactly 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. The spectrum of visible light is a 7. Music, in its most natural form, has 7 notes before the octave repeats and begins again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 7. Ancient astronomers identified 7 classical planets visible to the naked eye, the 7 wanderers moving across the sky in ways the fixed stars could not. The people of the ancient world did not invent the 7. They found it, written into light, written into sound, written into the sky. When God chose 7 as his number in Scripture, he was not creating an arbitrary religious symbol. He was pointing to a pattern already embedded in the fabric of creation, a signature pressed into light and sound and motion long before any human hand held a stylus. The creation was finished in 7. The flood covenant was signed in 7. The walls of Jericho fell on 7. The rain broke on the 7th look. The prophecy of the Messiah was written in 7s. The church's entire history is told in 7 letters. And on a Friday afternoon outside Jerusalem, a man who had claimed to be the author of all of it spoke one word. Finished. Not almost finished, not mostly finished, finished, the last of the 7s. The completion of completions, the oath sworn in the oldest language in the universe. So here is what I want to leave you with. 3 things. The first, 7 in Scripture always means completion, not luck, not religion, not superstition. When God uses 7, he is saying, I have brought this to its whole and full end. Nothing more is needed. The Sabbath is not a day off. It is a declaration that the work stands. The second, every time you see a 7 in the Bible, you are seeing God signing his name. The 7 priests at Jericho, the 7 colors in Noah's sky, the 7 years Jacob worked. The 7th look from the hill above Carmel. These are not decorations in the story. They are markers. God pressing his thumb into the wet clay of history and leaving a print so you will know. I was here. I did this. I finished this. And the third, the one I want you to sit with tonight. The cross was the final 7. Every 7 in the entire Bible, from the first Sabbath in Genesis chapter 2 to the 7 seals and 7 bowls in the last chapters of Revelation, is orbiting that Friday afternoon like satellites around a sun. Jacob's 14 years of waiting, Noah's 7 days before the rain, Joshua's 7 circuits before the walls fell, Elijah's 7th look before the cloud appeared, Daniel's 69 sevens stretching across 4.5 centuries. All of it was counting down to one moment, and when that moment came, the man at the center of it did not leave anything unfinished. He did not say, "It is almost done." He said, "Tetelestai." The debt is paid, the covenant is sealed, the oath is sworn, the 7th day has come. 735 times, and every single one of them is about this. Which 7 in this video landed hardest for you? Was it Daniel's prophecy, down to the exact week? Was it Jericho, the walls falling inward? Was it Ruth being called worth more than 7 sons? Tell me below. I read every comment. And if you have never seen the Bible as a book where everything is connected, where nothing is wasted, where a number pressed into the first chapter of Genesis is still echoing in the final chapter of Revelation, let today be the day that changes. God does not write in coincidences, he writes in 7s.